Hello, and welcome to American Motherhood, the podcast where we explore how society and politics shape motherhood in America. Today, we continue our local election series with Westerville City Council candidate Matt Erney. Matt is a husband, father of four, and longtime Westerville resident who built a career through owning two small local businesses. On the campaign trail, he's emphasized keeping national politics out of local decisions while focusing on families, safety, and fiscal responsibility. In this episode, we talk about how Matt's background shapes his vision for Westerville, what he's learned from first responders, and how he sees City Council's role in preserving both affordability and community values. We also dig into topics like utilities, the proposed earned income tax for Westerville City Schools, and what protecting religious freedom means in a diverse and growing city. My goal with this series is to make local elections more accessible for you, the voters. If you find this helpful, please share the episode with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And if you'd like to join the conversation, you can always reach me at americanmotherhood@gmail.com. Okay, let's dive in. Matt, thank you so much for being here and taking the time. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to getting to know more about you. To start, can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've lived in Westerville for about 15 years now. And my first stint of living here was actually right after I graduated college. I lived up off of Spring Road, and I really loved the city. I fell in love with the activities, just the vibrancy of kind of what was happening. That was shortly thereafter. It was no longer dry, so it was just a really cool vibe as the city was starting to develop and really, I guess, maybe find its future, which was pretty cool to be a part of. So I lived here for 4 years, and then I moved away for a while. But I always knew in my heart I was going to come back to Westerville when I had kids. And so it was cool for that to come back full circle. And I'll also say I've been a business owner for 15 years as well. So I love helping small businesses, helping them make an impact with what they do. I think impact is very important. And, that's something that I've been very fortunate to be able to do, running two companies. One is a social media or a digital marketing company called Social Firm. So we help small and mid-sized businesses with their website, their digital marketing, and their advertising. And my other business is called Red Dog Wi-Fi Solutions.
Okay.
And we focus on connectivity. So we'll go into an existing business restaurant and we'll help them put a distributed Wi-Fi system in so everybody can have high-speed connectivity. And then in a new build, we'll go in and run wire and install these types of systems. So
Okay.
I love connecting people, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's great. And I imagine both of those skills have really helped you kick off your campaign, right? With your website and all of the things.
Absolutely. 100%. Also, family is very big to me. My mom had 7 brothers, so I have grown up around uncles and cousins my whole life. I have 4 children of my own. So I have 3 girls and a boy. So starting at age 10 down to age 4, juggling the joys of having young children and running a business keeps me pretty busy.
Yeah, I imagine so. How then has all of your background and your experience as a father shaped your connection and your vision for Westerville?
Yeah, so with as much as I have going on, it takes, I guess, a bit of courage for me to step forward and do this, and also maybe a sanity check, which I did early on. So to be fair, here's the thing. I love working with businesses and I love helping them bring their dreams to life. But for me, to be great is to be intentional, to move quickly, and to do so with focus beyond myself. And that is generally service. So I'm always looking for ways that I can create an impact that's bigger than me. In my businesses, I'm looking for how can I help other companies scale and how can I also scale? And the opportunity to be an advocate for Westerville, it allows me to create an impact for 40,000 people that's meaningful. So that was a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And I always make my decisions by filtering. I have a very, very simple equation. It's 3 things. Number 1, is this something that's important to be done? Number two, is this something that I need to do? It's important to be done by me. And number three, does it need to be done by me right now?
Hmm.
And Bethany, I was able to get pretty clear answers on the first two. Whether it was the right time now was the one that took 4 months and
Yeah.
a lot of soul searching. And I'll tell you a little bit about that story. But it seems like it would be more convenient to wait until I'm retired
Hmm.
or to wait until the kids are out of the house
Hmm.
and I have a little extra free time. But I was also really inspired by, there's a longtime city council member named Mike Hayek. I
Hmm.
know Mike pretty well. We go to church together, and he's been on the council for 32 years, and he's retiring. And it's important that we have people that step in and fill those shoes. I mean, you know, he did a phenomenal job for a really long time, and he also did a phenomenal job of convincing me that I wasn't going to be any younger than I am today. I'll never have more energy than I do today, that I
Hmm.
can do this, and that I'm the right person to do it. So, his voice
Hmm.
was helpful. I met with a few other past city council members and just people that I trust. And most importantly, my wife.
Yeah.
She had to help me make that decision. It had to be okay because we're going to have soccer practice and volleyball practice and football practice, potentially all at the same time. And I'm not going to, be available to help if I'm on council on Tuesday nights, for instance. So
Right. Right.
she was a big decision, and she felt like this was something that was worth doing and that I should do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a family effort for sure. So maybe your 10-year-old and your 8-year-old, do they recognize what this could mean for you? Or is this just, kind of like a new job or, a new responsibility for their dad?
It's a good question. I don't know that they recognize it, but I hope that I'm modeling it and that they're
Hmm.
seeing, okay, my dad had all of us, maybe they're reflecting back and looking back on it in the future, but he knew that when something was important, you make time for it and you do it whether you're comfortable or completely comfortable or not. And the reality is that I would say that a large percentage of people are more comfortable in their own four walls of their home, feeling the way that they feel, not putting themselves out there, not becoming a talking point on Reddit or Facebook or X, and the reality is I hope that they see, what, Dad, he believed in something, and he really, I love Westerville.
Yeah.
I do. I'm so proud to call Westerville home where I live, and I want to continue that for as long as my kids are in Westerville, so that they feel the same way. So I hope that they feel it through that transmission of just what they are able to reflect on when they're a little older.
Right, right. Oh, that's great. So, were there any specific concerns or priorities that really inspired you to run for city council?
It's more about I'm just searching. I'm always searching for a way that I can create impact. So I, I'm kind of big on like not having an agenda because I
Hmm.
think that subverts the will of what's best for the city, and I would rather it be more citizen driven.
Hmm.
Um, National politics are always going to be divisive. State politics are going to be divisive. In my opinion, those things need to be battled out in those forums. So, what concerns me, I guess you could say, is if organizations that have national and state interests are pushing local politics and pushing that as part of an agenda
Hmm.
and supporting candidates to where those candidates feel like they need to then push that in a nonpartisan type council, that would be concerning. I'm not sure that that's exactly what's happening. I think current council does a pretty good job. Listen, this city's run really well for 167 years. It's got a phenomenal foundation. I think I just want to more protect that and preserve that history and be
Hmm.
respectful of that and find where are our common interests as people more so than what can I bring and change to city council, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That's great. So, how does your business experience in digital marketing and leadership training translate into strengths for city budgeting and fiscal policy?
Look, running a small business is a grind. It
Yeah.
really is. And so, the first thing I'll say is the importance of brand. That is what marketing is all about. It's about brand building. And what I love is Westerville has a great brand. And therefore, it is the job, in my opinion, of council to protect that brand and keep that brand strong. And a lot of other cities do look to Westerville.
Mm.
Okay. And that's a huge responsibility. That makes it that much more important for us when looking at our brand to keep our people as united as possible and keep the, non-procedural type things as much out of council as possible. And to be fair, 90% of what's done in city council is that way. But I think most people would agree that the tides of that are sort of ebbing towards potentially changing. And I need to be able to ask good questions and be a part of those conversations to keep Westerville great like it has been.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great perspective. How would you describe Westerville's brand today?
Yeah. So Westerville's brand is very fiscally sound.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, there's a lot of strategy, just like it would be in a marketing agency. You're creating a 5-year strategic plan and you're continuing to evaluate and execute on that. There's a lot of look ahead. We're looking at, okay, what kind of impacts are tariffs going to potentially have on our ability to get, let's just say, transformers, since the city provides its own electric and water utility and also fiber utility, which is starting to spread, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
How can we get ahead of that? How can we purchase so that our lead times don't become a major issue, or maybe just the cost? We project the cost is going to go up 50% in 3 years. So if we buy these now, we'll end up saving. That's great. We're looking at electricity generation. Okay, how can we supplement with solar and other means of sort of natural gas, or ways that we can kind of get ahead of that. And so we provide a really good product at the price. So fiscal is awesome. Parks, second to none.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling of a city within a park, right? As much green space and trees and just, I don't know, it feels like Westerville can breathe when I come home. You coming in from 270 and it's just I think really encouraging just to the way you feel when you start coming up State Street. You see the trees, and in the wintertime when we have the lights, and there's just that feel, right? And so that comes back to this small town feel. I think that's important. And it's one of for Westerville being as large as it is, as a suburb, I think it does a really nice job of making everybody feel like it still is their small town community.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's, I've been saying that all season long. It's easy to forget how big Westerville really is, especially, as I've been talking to all of our candidates and how understanding how far your reach has to be when you go into Uptown or, wherever you are local to within Westerville. It does have that small town feel, but it reaches way beyond that. You emphasize the importance of city council being nonpartisan. How do you separate personal political views from your duty to serve all of our residents?
For me, I use my core values as a way to really help me in those types of decisions. Obviously, I'll just share as a business owner, I have people of all different types of beliefs in my company. And as a leader, I've got to find a way to communicate with them on a human level. And I think that's important for all of us. And for me, it also starts with being curious.
Mm-hmm.
When I lean into curiosity and I lean away from judgment, which is probably one of the hardest things to do, because as humans, we are hardwired to make judgments every day. Thousands of little micro judgments. That's how we've survived. We went from being, sort of pack creatures, and we needed a village and community and needed to stay a part of that support system to survive, to now thriving and being a little more independent. So anyways, that's really important. And my core values are courage. So being courageous, speaking up, taking a step forward, you know, putting yourself out there, which is so hard to do.
Yeah.
Having a difficult conversation with somebody, talking to somebody that's different than you. I mean, just goes on for forever, right? Relationships, which really gets into the be curious, don't be judgmental piece. Integrity. We have to do the right thing. Even if that right thing means we know somebody's not going to be happy, one side or the other, we still have to use our integrity and do what's best for the city. Service, how can we give back? Right. We are here for a relatively short time. And while I'm here, I want to be as impactful as I can to just making humanity better. So proactivity is the last one, which you heard me talk about. And I was very encouraged. I've had a lot of conversations with past city manager, Dave Collinsworth, as well as the current city manager and their team. And it's been really nice because the city is so proactive.
Yeah.
And so that kind of talks to what we were previously talking about with why Westerville's so great. It's just proactivity. I'm the same way. I'm that way in my business and just in my thinking, just trying to ask questions, be curious, and then bring solutions to the table as well, which is very important. Don't just be unhappy with things and stir the pot, but like try to figure out how can we do something.
Right. Earlier, you mentioned that, let me preface this by saying a lot of our candidates have said that they don't have an agenda and that we want to focus on being nonpartisan. But it always feels like there's something they have in mind, but nobody has said anything. So I'm going to put this on you, if that's okay. What are there any concerns within the city that you see that could be or that appear to be partisan, right? Or there's one side of the aisle who is working towards it or against it. And do you think that would impact these next 4 years? And how will you stay nonpartisan when approaching those concerns?
My biggest concern is that our city will become a political theater and that the stage will be uptown. And the people that are affected most outside of every one of us that's a resident are the business owners who I've heard from who are hurting. And look, I know we've got some divisive things going on in our country. But when we're punishing our small business owners who are trying to keep our city vibrant because they have to close because there's protests, because there's no parking, because there's a negative vibe in the city just because people are angry about something. And it's taken place in one of our most important, cherished assets, which I think every candidate would tell you, Uptown is one of our best treasures, right?
Oh, yeah.
I do think that's a problem. It's not like it's something that I'm not talking about, but I do think it's also bad optics when we have current council members that are out taking pictures and selfies in there. And I think that's a bad look. And I think it's one that, business owners are confused about. So those are more private type conversations that I think we should have, maybe not necessarily, behind closed doors, but it's like, we need to protect this brand of Westerville, which I mentioned earlier. And I'm just concerned that if we aren't thoughtful about those optics, that people could be confused about what that means.
That's helpful context. Thank you. Okay. Westerville is known for being family friendly. So what sets your vision apart from other candidates as we're talking about the priorities for families?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what everybody else's thoughts are or what they've said on it. So I'm not sure how it's different or not. But, again, having young kids, I think it's very important that they love this city as much as we do. And so there's basic things. Right now, the community center does a phenomenal job with programming.
Yeah.
There's so much there that we already do, that we offer. I feel like a lot of times, as at least I'll speak for myself, in the summertime, we're looking for things for our kids to do to get them out of the house. They're already getting sick of each other and sort of button heads. And it's like, can we do to keep them busy and active? And there's so much to do there. I think it's a great resource. Continuing to just look at ways to improve and invest in our playgrounds at some of these parks. We do a really good job now. So it's not like it's something that needs fixed, but there's renovations I think that will be improved. There's also a difference in the way kids are playing these days. There's a lot more move towards this like American Ninja Warrior style, right? So I think we have opportunities. And by the way, the city's done a great job with the BMX park. And, there's some things that we're doing that are along those lines. And I think those are smart things to do, continue to do, invest in those types of things. But we just need to make sure that our kids don't feel like they need to stay trapped in a basement playing video games so much as possible. And, I hate to sound like the old guy, right? Like, oh, my kids. Yeah, because at some point my parents probably said the same thing. But I think kids are just confused these days, and they're turning maybe to more, I don't know, online cultures to help fill that void. And again, as humans, going back to how we evolved and how we've always been hardwired, we have to have ways to communicate, and we have to be able to read each other's nonverbal body language as well to communicate. And the only way you get better at something that you're not good at is to do more of it, which is an interesting concept. And so, for somebody who's, I don't know, a little more antisocial or maybe a little more introverted, I think those opportunities to get out and be with other kids will help build life skills down the road. So that's kind of a long answer, but it's about just creating opportunities for kids to get together. One of my favorite parts of being a parent was the amount of friends that we made and new people that we met because we had kids, because we were at a function with our kids. And then you meet other parents, whether it's a birthday party or it's just hanging out at a park or at a kid's game, at a soccer game, So I just think it's good. It's just good for Westerville to continue to do things that are family friendly.
Yeah, I agree. My oldest daughter is a little social butterfly, and she will want to meet all of the kids on the playground. And the other day we were at a birthday party, and she grabbed my hand and she said, "I want to have a play date with my friend. Please come meet his mom." And I was like, okay, but I'm like you, and I'm an introvert, and I'd much rather just be in my comfort zone. And I was like, okay, I will put on my big girl shoes and I will meet more people. So I hear you.
It's great. It's true. It's really, and then for me, it's like running, right? Like physically running. I don't like running, but I like having run.
Yeah, there you go. You also have, forgive me, I can't remember. I think this is a priority on your website, but focus on safety in Westerville, right? And so I'm curious, how have you engaged with our first responders to learn what we can do as a community to better support them?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to start, my brother is a firefighter, Columbus firefighter. So so I have a lot of respect for all of our safety services, and they do a great job. I have met with the local FOP, had a chance to listen to them, hear some of the things that are important to them. And I heard a lot of really good feedback. It's mostly been, we don't have any real problems with Westerville. Westerville does a good job. Westerville's proactive. Westerville, they provide the training and they provide the tools and the flock camera system and some of the more, the newer advanced things. Like, we invest in that stuff, right?
Right.
So from what I've heard, I've spoken with police officers, with firefighters. I've talked to city staff, city manager, and I have a pretty good idea about what they need. And I also have a pretty good understanding that they create their own budgets when they need things specifically. And then they just bring those budgets to council, and council reviews and approves them. So it's not even like it's the purview of us to create what they need. They tell us what they need. And in the conversations I've had when I've had questions, whether it was through email, I've always gotten a good response. I plan to do a ride along with the PD as well. That was recommended to me. So I look forward to that. I think you hear more. It's just like when you're, a leader of an organization. The more time you spend with the people that are in your company that do a lot of the work, I feel like the better you understand what the real needs are of the city. So um, I look forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Can anyone do a ride along? Is that just like a request for any citizen, or how does that work? Do you know?
I don't know exactly, but I would assume at this point I'm just an anyone.
Fair enough.
So I would imagine that if they're going to let me ride along, that they would let you or any of us. I am learning the process. I think there's like a document, a page or two you have to fill out, so
Sure.
I can keep you posted on that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Okay, so we've already touched on this a little bit, but what opportunities and challenges come with Westerville managing its own utilities, and how do you balance that with affordability for our families?
Yeah, I mean, our city utilities are a huge strength. In terms of how that pans out as a value to residents, we're about 80 cents on the dollar, roughly, compared to some of our neighboring utilities. So that's phenomenal. But the challenges that we're going to have, I know I mentioned a little earlier, but it's equipment, right? So staying ahead of lead times for major equipment that's needed in the electrical division is something that's very important. I know transformers and some of those things can be harder to get. With tariffs, we could see a significant increase in cost. So just understanding and keeping our finger on the pulse and starting to plan for those things. Additionally, we have, I think, a challenge that we may have is going to be with the growth in data centers. It's starting to get some attention now, but data centers are huge resource hogs. They hog two major resources. Do you know what those are?
Water and electricity.
That's exactly right. And those are the two city services that we offer. So I think we just need to continue to monitor how that pans out. The city does a good job now when it comes to we're looking at ways we can, keep costs down with some natural gas and solar as ways to also kind of reduce some of our transmission costs. There's great programs in place for when we hit peak. If residents want to sign up to get discounts, there's a program for that where the city can basically adjust your thermostat and things like that during peak time so that it helps keep our costs down. So I think city does a good job there, but we need to, we got to continue to balance affordability and I think communicate well in this instance as well. When you run your own city services, communication with residents is going to be very important. Just making sure that we keep that line of communication open and find ways to communicate that may be different than we have in the past so that people hear us.
Yeah, that's another common concern is communication. But I'm sure you know this in your line of business, communication can always be improved. But just to have that awareness, I think is really helpful for the whole community and wanting to get that information out.
I would extend that even one step farther and say it's follow up.
Yeah.
I think that's a great area. The residents, and as a resident myself, I need an advocate for me. If I come with a question or something that I'm not clear on, I don't want to just tell somebody about how I'm not happy about it and have them say, okay, that sounds good. I'll look into it. If you go a step farther and you actually send them an email after you've researched it, I think that goes a long way, that personal touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's invites the community to hold you accountable. And if you're part of that conversation, you can identify those concerns and be proactive, do what you need to do for the city.
Agreed.
Let's see here. You've pledged to support parents in guiding and protecting their children. What does that look like from a city council seat?
Well, growing up as a kid, my parents were like, hey, we're going to be in charge and we're going to help you make decisions that are in your best interest until you're 18. When you're 18, you can do whatever you want. And I think that that's a major responsibility of parents, being able to nurture and guide their children. One of the downfalls I feel of the amount of connectivity that we have as a society is kids are exposed to things that they're not necessarily always prepared to handle. And it happens outside of normal learning. It's just it's a byproduct of the internet. It's a byproduct of social media, and it's created a lot of mental health issues. I feel for our younger generation because just the way social media is, it makes them feel like they have to be more and more extreme to stand out, to get attention, or there's just a lot going on there. And the role of parents is more important now than ever. And I think that in Westerville, our parents need to have every tool at their disposal to be able to help nurture their child. It is a physiological fact that our prefrontal cortex is not developed until after we're 18 years old, much later in boys, and particularly later for me. So, at any rate, I just think with that in mind, parents have to be more engaged now than ever. There is so much noise that I want to make sure our parents have the ability to do so, and that even if there are things that are good, like on paper, but then there are things that set precedents that may be dangerous. I want to be careful, and I want to make sure that we are all thinking through those types of things as we're being a city that's a leader, and that other cities are looking up to and watching, just to make sure that we're not doing things that are performative, that may or may not already, like, they may not even be an issue in the city, but it's a performative thing that leads to the next stepping stone, which could strip rights from parents to be able to help nurture and shepherd their children.
Mm-hmm. So similar to earlier, I'll ask, do you have something in mind that you're thinking about when you want to safeguard those parental rights?
I don't know what could come up next, but I think that if we look backwards, I tend to look in the rearview mirror is a much smaller picture. And there were a variety of good reasons why the gender conversion ban was considered. But I think that the precedent that it sets is very dangerous, potentially. So again, my thing is make sure we're asking the right questions about what does this look like? Because to my understanding, not long thereafter, another city decided, because Westerville did it, that we're going to do it. And, we need to make sure we are thinking through every decision we make. Not saying that that is particularly a wrong decision. I just think that I had some unanswered questions.
Yeah. And I don't know the timeline on that. As we talked about, you're a busy parent, right? You're a busy business owner. But did you engage in that conversation with the city council? Because I'm also curious, like, what the conversation was like, at that time.
No, I didn't. I did not in that particular instance. So, yeah, it was this year when I started getting interested. And I'll be the first to tell you, I had never attended a city council meeting or, a school board meeting prior to this year. So that had already been sort of in the works. And I think that happened maybe I want to say it was like spring when that passed.
Yeah, I don't know, but I understand. It's like you said, I can't remember if you said this before we started recording or when this was, but at some point you have to decide to go for it, right? There's never a right time, and then you kind of jump in head first. And so I know that there's a distinction between following everything that's going on in the city and being so engaged before you make that decision, right? You have other priorities as well that you were managing.
Yeah.
So I do want to follow that up with, I pulled up an article from WOSU Public Media, because I've talked about this before with another candidate and we didn't really define it in the conversation. So I'll just read it from the article. The ordinance bans the practice known as conversion therapy within the city, and it was approved with a vote of 5-2. The practice is designed to try to get a person to change their gender expression, gender identity, or sexual orientation. The measure bans any mental health professional from conducting the practice on minors within the city, whether or not the professional is being paid to do it. I always think it's important to clarify definitions when we're talking, right? And so I just wanted to define that before we move on to our next topic of conversation. Still focused on kids and families, right? So as families in Westerville consider their vote on the school levy this fall, what perspective would you share with them?
Yeah, we've got to continue to protect and invest in our schools. I am very pro schools, first off. I want our schools to be great. I want them to continue to grow. I want them to grow in strategic ways, just like the city is developed. The school board is sort of like the city council in schools. So they're completely separate. The superintendent is more or less the city manager. So they have their independent structure, but it's very important that we support them. You know, we need to be a united city. And, I've continued to do a lot of research on this upcoming levy because it is important. And,
Right.
you know, I don't think it was as clear as it should have been in the beginning. I feel like it was positioned as, quite candidly, I feel like it was, if you don't support us asking for this money, then you're anti-kids and anti-public, anti-Westerville schools. And I just didn't like that approach. I felt like there needed to be more conversation personally behind some of the numbers that I just felt like weren't very clear. I mean, I think that the very first postcard that was sent out may have had a typo on it even. So at any rate, I would say that the current administration has room to get better, but we all have room to get better. And I am very much for our kids. I don't want to see, I hate that we've come down to threats. And the threats are, if we don't approve this levy, then we're going to have to cut all the fun stuff for the kids. I don't think that's a great way to really get everybody behind what needs to happen. But with that said, I understand that there's a need. I've done more research into the numbers, and I am comfortable that, look, we need to do this. This levy's got to go. It needs to be done. But we're going to have a bigger problem, Bethany. And the bigger problem could happen as early as next year, where if the state decides to strip out property taxes and there is no solution, that means this is just a really small Band-Aid. So I say, let's go. And I'm always going to support schools, and I'm always going to support the kids, and I'm always going to support what's best for Westerville. It's a really delicate situation, but it's got to be confronted with courage, and we've got to, enter it with curiosity and not judgment. And I feel like there's a lot of people that are just getting further away from each other, and they're getting madder and madder at each other, when we need to start heading the other direction and figuring out what needs to happen for Westerville to uphold its brand and do the best that it can for its residents and for the people that count on Westerville schools that are outside of the city limits as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is, as you touched on, a really good example of how an issue can divide a community, and somehow this has become quote unquote political, right? In approaching the subject of whether or not to or how to fund our schools. And to your point, I think that the rhetoric earlier is coming from community members, right? This, if you are anti-levy or if you vote no, then you're against our kids. That's not coming from the district, but, a circle within our community. And it is difficult to manage that or persuade that otherwise until we get engaged, until we have these conversations. And so I think that's really important as well. And so we're recording this on the 21st. Tomorrow is the school board meeting, and we will hear more about what will have to be cut from our programming or what have you if the levy does fail. And I just want to say that it's I don't think it's meant to be threats. I just think that the community needs to know the impact it'll have if it doesn't pass. That was part of the feedback I actually personally had the last go around last fall, is we didn't understand what differences we would see if the levy didn't pass. And so I personally think that it's really important to identify what those funds will go to in that way. And it's a good way to hold everybody accountable, right?
Love that. And I'll say this, one of the other reasons that I loved Westerville and decided to move back was I have a very close group of friends. They all went to Westerville South. I have another group that went to North. And they are some of the most tight-knit friends ever. And I always just thought, man, I would have loved to have had that type of relationship with that big of a group. I mean, there's like 30 of them, 35 of them. They're all still like super close, and everywhere they go, they just roll as like a clan of 30. It's crazy. And so the schools have always been good. They've always fostered that type of connection. And I went to, Bishop Hartley on the east side. So, I just always thought that was really cool because I think my graduating class size was 160 kids.
Yeah. Oh, that's good perspective too. So you've talked about preserving Westerville's tradition of protecting religious freedom. What does that mean to you, and how do you ensure all residents feel at home here?
Yeah, so Westerville is really interesting in the sense when it was first founded, it was really founded around, a couple of Protestant churches that were in the area. You know, um, there's always been an element of religious foundation in the way the city was created. Um, I think we're pretty welcoming to people of faith, and there's a ton of people in Westerville that are of faith, and we do need to continue to protect that. For a number of years back, the people of faith were asked to, like, okay, we need to make sure that we are accepting of all people and everybody else that comes in, and that's great. And so I think it's just important that we don't allow things to go the other direction where now the people that are not of faith are telling the people who are of faith that this is no longer important and you need to conform to our way of thinking rather than us all coexisting and, respecting that tradition and the importance of that to what Westerville has become and what it, over 167 years, why it was great and how that's benefited the way the city ran, the way it treated each other, the way that the people gathered. I just want to make sure that we continue to protect that. And I'll be very clear that I think that the invocation serves a great purpose. It serves a great purpose in this country. It serves a great purpose in this state. And it serves a great purpose in Westerville. And I strongly support keeping that. I went to my very first council meeting when Councilman David Grimes proposed that we remove the invocation from the city council meetings and for the city staff to start spending their time and resources to do research on how we could possibly remove that. And it was seconded by, Councilman Reem Snyder. I think that's a concern. I think that's potentially an attack on the First Amendment and our ability to continue to have the faith that, as I just described it, that's important and not restrict that. It's a very small part of the meetings. I think it serves a really good purpose. I feel like it's welcoming to people of all faiths and backgrounds. But again, this is the history of this city. We don't need to necessarily conform the way our city is to the new people that come into it, but rather the city has its own brand and culture, and that's a part of Westerville's brand. And I would be very concerned about that type of shift in the brand of the city.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned how you appreciated the invocation and you felt that it was welcoming to others, but it's not welcoming to everybody. And so how do you reconcile that, right, with everything that we've said up to this point? And I believe that you want everyone to feel that Westerville is at home, but that's not the case. So how do we engage in this conversation to reconcile tradition and also that we need to evolve? And whether we're talking about the invocation or whatever comes up in the future, that I think that's a critical question that everyone will face.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to have answers for things where you're not going to have agreement, and there's not going to be enough agreement on either side. What we need to have is conversations that, again, are curiosity. So it's understanding, why people feel the way they do and why they feel that it's harmful the way it has been for the last 167 years. I think that's probably where it would start, create a bridge there. But again, for me, I feel like it is, it's about the First Amendment in this case, and it's a space where different voices are already encouraged. This is a part of the brand of the city. This is a part of the way the city government runs itself in Westerville, Ohio. And this is the way that that city has run for 167 years that we all say that we love. And we're not going to make everybody happy all the time, but this is something where, in the absence of an incredibly compelling reason that most people are behind, I don't see this as a priority for the city.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I can see that. I agree. Like, I had no knowledge of this until starting these conversations, that this was happening behind the scenes. Does it have an impact in how the city is run? Probably not. But at the same time, because we're in this conversation, is it that you are defaulting to tradition because you yourself are Christian and you value that time? And how do we recognize that not everyone is Christian or not everyone is of a faith? And how is it a matter of trying to include others? Or, I think that because we are in this conversation, we have to reach consensus in some way so that it doesn't continue to divide council.
Sure.
Okay, looking ahead, what's one thing Westerville does exceptionally well today that you want to protect as the city grows?
Yeah, Westerville does a great job with strategic planning.
Yeah.
Phenomenal, just amount of effort that the city staff puts in, thinking, processing, looking at opportunities, talking to, businesses that could be opportunities for land that we're developing, just continuing to develop strategically. And I would say that's the number one thing. Secondly, we prioritize safety services. Our police, our fire, our EMS, they have the tools that they need to be successful. They have the density that's needed right now to serve the residents within the 3-minute to 4-minute window of getting to you in an emergency. That's phenomenal. The city's very fiscally sound. We have a AAA rated bond rating, which is phenomenal. Continue to put money aside. So we have rainy day funds so we can invest in, or have savings set up for projects, like the city hall renovation, the justice center, things like that allow us to, if we need debt, to structure it very cheaply or to completely avoid it and avoid paying the interest like other cities would to be able to grow and develop. So I think that's really important. I think we have some really cool opportunities coming up, especially the opportunity at 64 East Walnut, whenever we consolidate the city services into one building over at City Hall, right?
Yep.
And then that building is going to become now a development opportunity. So I think we need to continue to look into what is that going to look like? What's the best fit for that area? How can we maximize that space? And also, what challenges will that bring? That's something we'll need to look at from a budgeting standpoint. And there's always going to be people that aren't necessarily happy when things are developing and changing, So how do we get ahead of that? How do we make sure we get the resident feedback that we need and communicate that well? So those are a couple things I'm excited about and things I think the city does great. Our parks, like I mentioned earlier, we do a great job. Streets, very well taken care of. We've got an unbelievable team. Safety services, the neighborhoods, the vibe here is great. It's a small town feel. It feels like home. So those are the things that I love about Westerville.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, how did I do? Did we hit all your top priorities? Is there anything else that you want to talk on before I let you go?
I think we did a pretty good job. I'm really excited to advocate for small businesses.
Yeah.
We've got to continue to really find ways for small businesses to have, an opportunity to develop, especially if you want to be here in Westerville. If you want to be in Westerville, you need an advocate. You need somebody that's helping you if there's challenges with zoning or permitting, So that is the one area that I just want to see. Like, I hope to explore a partnership a little bit further with the Chamber of Commerce. We have a new chamber president coming in. So his name's Matt Lofi.
Okay.
He starts October 1st. So Janet Davis has been there for 35 years. She's retired at the end of this month, which is bittersweet because I love Janet. She's phenomenal. Yeah. But I also really like Matt, and I think he brings a really neat opportunity to the table. He's very focused on the development and how can he, take it a step farther and Look, businesses are very important to the growth of the city. That's where the majority of our operating income comes from, is from the businesses and the taxes that we generate through those companies. So that would
Mm-hmm.
just be like one other thing I'm kind of focused on is let's knock
Yeah.
that one out of the park too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so recognizing that that's a huge piece of our revenue, what's the best way that we can manage the balance between small business and established businesses, right, or larger businesses bringing in their employees or customers to Westerville?
In areas that are walkable, I think small businesses have the best opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So when you create kind of a congregation of smaller businesses to where they can all feed and help each other by, if you have foot traffic, then that generally increases everything else. I think that that's the positive. Whereas when you have the bigger companies, you don't really need that. They can have their own, campus, if you will, or their own lot, and they don't need that same level of interaction to succeed.
Sure.
I think that's one area. So I don't know. I really like this opportunity for East of Africa. I think that project has got a lot of potential.
Yeah.
There's some other things that are exciting in the city, and
Yeah.
I love obviously Uptown,
Yeah.
but there's not a lot we can do. I mean, in order for it to maintain its historic charm, it's kind of has to maintain its look and layout. So
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you again, Matt, for your time. Can you tell us where to find you the rest of this campaign season?
yeah, absolutely. You can find me at Asterisk quite often because I
Okay.
love that restaurant and I'm often there. And if I'm in a meeting, that's probably where I'm at, either there or High Bank.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, on a lighter angle, you can find me on my website, which is matterney.com. You can find me on social media, on Facebook, Matt Erney for Westerville City Council. And I have an email newsletter that you can sign up for via the website. For anybody who's interested in the yard sign, you can do that on the website as well. There's also an email address, which is friends of Erney, ERNEY at Gmail. I would encourage anybody that has questions or would like clarification on anything to reach out to me. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to represent the residents of Westerville.
Yeah, wonderful. All right. Well, thank you again, Matt. I appreciate it.
You as well. Thanks, Bethany.